the question is this about China's track record with COVID control, or is this now becoming a question about human rights violations?
Well, I think it's, primarily a concern to do with human rights violations. I mean, I think, the fact that China may not necessarily be handling the pandemic as well as it should have is really, not a major concern of the West, other than the sort of economic implications that it has on trade to do with the lockdowns that we've seen across China that have sparked these issues. But really, I think, some of the comments that we've seen out of the West and last night, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak made a very dramatic speech when he said that the golden era of UK-Chinese relations was over. It's really important to understand that these protests that we've seen over the last few days, may have, sparked an opportunity to discuss China, because it's really been in the world's eye for the past few days. But really, I don't think it really triggered actually the kind of major policy changes that Sunak and others are discussing. I think really, there are kind of two main reasons why the West is looking to kind of change its policy towards China at the moment, which are sort of interlinked. The first is that the post-Cold War theory that you can try to exert a sort of moderating influence over countries that you consider to be your adversaries through economic integration has really been dramatically debunked by the experience of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Clearly, Western, economic dependence upon Russian oil and gas has not provided any kind of leverage that it can use to change Russian policy. And I think, it's certainly very much to the opposite. And I think, the predominant view amongst Western policymakers is that, China will try to do the same with its economic dependency that it's built up from the West.
What happens next, and what does Xi Jinping and the Communist Chinese Party do next? There are a lot of sort of murmurs out there on how they will retract from zero COVID. Maybe there will be a spin that the current variant is not very dangerous. It's like a flu. Maybe they'll say that already a lot of lives have saved. Mr. Tangent talked about 6 million lives being saved. That's the line that will be put forward. Basically, our work here is done. Let's open up. And in a way where face can be saved.
Well, I think, 6 million lives have only been saved if you ensure that actually that protection has longevity. And if you're going to try to change the policy that actually ends those lockdown policies in the context of, only 37% of over 80s, having 3 doses of the vaccine in China, in the context of China having very low intensive care capacity compared to other countries around the world, you're actually not going to be in the situation where you've saved them, but simply where you've actually delayed lives. And a lot of health analysts have actually looked at the situation in China, and actually if you were to completely lift all the lockdown restrictions at the moment, you may actually get up to 2 million people in hospital at any one time. And so, really there's no simple solution for the Chinese president in this situation, because he can either try to appease the protesters and actually, change the policies and reduce the lockdowns, but that is going to result in a major social cost as well, as I've mentioned, from the health implications. Or you can try to continue with these policies, but actually result in risking further instability. So I think ultimately, there won't be either policy to the extreme. They will try to lift some of the restrictions in some of the areas that I would say are causing some of the, most serious protests. But I think, we'll have to wait and see, what is the determination levels of the protesters. Protests tend to be more intense in China on the weekends. So I think this weekend should certainly provide a lot of those signs that we're looking for, how this will end up. But I think, the final point that I would make is that the Chinese government will escalate the security response that it has to this to whatever level it sees necessary to put down these protests. I mean, China has a bigger internal security budget than its overseas defense budget. So I think certainly we will see more security, but as to the exact policy direction, I think we won't see a sort of total lift, and we won't see a total continuation of what we've seen over the past few years.
So if it's police versus protesters, it's no match. The police are going to overwhelm protesters. Now,